discuss it and decide if that's something we want to go together as a committee. And then there's another thing that Bobby always talked about was Bobby Starr, Senator Starr, was the miscellaneous, like a miscellaneous ag bill or something we could bring to the floor. And I assume that's something, if we have some tags on the wall still, we want to go forward, Drew, and they're not big earth shattering moving legislation, we just throw them together in a miscellaneous bill and bring it.
So let me start with the miscellaneous bills. I met yesterday with the secretary, and it's a meeting that we have every year at the beginning of the session, along with the Senate counterpart. So in the past, it would have been Senator Starr. And the agency presents a list of what are typically pretty minor changes to statute, technical changes, you could typically describe them as, that they're hoping that we'll take up. And it may be around a dozen different things. This year, the clean water, the EPA/clean water topic is part of that conversation. And we're not quite sure, I think, how we're going to handle it. As I was saying, maybe a little bit earlier, whether that will start in the Senate or start in our committee. But in any case, we would, my Senate counterpart and I would take that list and say, right, we'll cut it in half, and you can work on these, these items, and we'll start on these items, and then we will take testimony on it. We will pass a committee bill. It will become a committee bill, and then it'll cross over to the other body. And then in the second half of the session, we now have that bill, which we will have to take testimony on from the Senate's bill. And there's an opportunity there to add, it's a miscellaneous bill with miscellaneous subjects, to add other things that might have come up during the course of the year. Last year, we added, I think it was maybe the pet shop. We took up a bill on pet shops and puppy parks. I think we add that into the miscellaneous bill. So anyway, that is one thing that will happen. More generally, the committee bills are always possible up until a certain date. I don't remember what that date is, but it's later than the deadline for submitting a bill request. My own suggestion, and I've probably said this, maybe said this at the committee or maybe said it individually, that I think to the extent that you have an idea that you would like to bring to, all our colleagues, the best way to do that is to work with Legislative Council, get a bill introduced and have it be a bill up on the wall, and to have had as much, legwork done as possible before it gets to that point. And that often means speaking to advocates, speaking to members of the administration, trying to get as far along in the process of, if you want it to be successful, getting as far along the process as you can. And I say just from experience that things get to be so fast moving and so busy that I know last year and the previous year there was a desire to have something done as a committee bill, and I don't think I was discouraging of it. I think it was as encouraging as it could be, but we just weren't able to pull it together. It requires more time than we have typically in this room together as a committee. It still requires work to be done outside of the bounds that we have here. I don't know if that answers your question, Richard, but
yeah, it does. And what I'm thinking is, and to me, it's simple and benign, and maybe nothing's ever simple and benign, but agricultural trucks can be registered to, don't mark me, but somewhere like 65,999, which would be a 10-wheeler. And a lot of farms now are using 18-wheelers and would like to make it legit. And because they'd just like to make it proper and allow us to and I'm not talking triaxles and overweight permits and everything else. I'm talking just that 80,000 pound mark. And, so would I be better off reaching out to Mike about sending Mike an email on that idea?
I think I would, yeah, I just, again, generally I would. And he can then, it might not be Mike who would end up working on
Yeah.
it. There was a bill a couple of years ago, it was 2 sessions ago now, 2 biennium ago, dealing with weight limits for logging trucks. I think it was before you were in, Jed. And that was a bill the Transportation Committee looked at, worked on.
So it might be good for him to talk to transportation. And see
Yeah.
what they have to say.
Yeah.
Talk to Matt.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, there, as you say, it sounds simple and benign, and maybe it is. Maybe it's something pretty straightforward that, if you checked in with the other committee, checked in with the agencies, it'd be, oh, that'd be something we could tack on to, another bill, then miscellaneous bill.
Yeah, it's just creating that one other checkbox in the registration form, but I need to go grab a form to see if it's already there or not. I don't believe it is.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Great.
So yeah, just the main things I'm interested in this year, I think, is tied up to what it sounded like folks in our 3 towns that I'm representing wanted to see happen here. So everything is that I'm thinking about, has to be factored through the lens of affordability. But keeping costs down and making sure that whatever we're investing in is going to bring good return for our people. Along those lines, I feel like I think with the clean heat standard and things like that, that's been a big concern with folks. Generally, the conversations around carbon and climate change as it relates to trying to set an example for our country or the world to certain standards to try and reduce carbon, or even trying to, honestly, at the end of the day, change the weather, so to speak. I think that's personally an investment that will unduly overburden our own people. When you look at the rest of the world and the amount of carbon that's being put out, to even if we were to set an example, I think that's almost too much of a burden for our own state to handle. So, shifting focus from trying to essentially change the weather or set an example for how we can change the weather, to, how can we best invest the money that's coming, into our responsibility, for our people, and kind of running it just like I was with my own house and my own farm, really. That's kind of how I see it. I've got 2 bills in right now with legislative council. One's actually on, I don't know which committee we'll go to, but one is on essentially on solar radiation modification, geoengineering. Maybe that's a term you're familiar with, but it's essentially would be prohibiting any institution or person from trying to do research or actively trying to create solar radiation modification, which is there's for instance, in April, San Francisco Bay, a retired US carrier launched essentially salt up into the atmosphere to try and do cloud brightening in the area. And to really look at, can we cool, at least locally, cool the ground temperatures that that area is experiencing. And there are 14 states that are currently looking at legislation that has to do with this. And so it's kind of a big concern to me. Obviously, we're constantly looking at trying to mitigate pollution in our state and have clean water and clean air. And this is one that's concerning to me, that there's, with some environmental proponents saying that we have to do something to cool the earth or else. There've been these kind of ethical conversations going on at MIT for over a decade, or a decade in the past, talking about solar radiation modification to try and cool the earth, but then possibility of the risks associated with that. So that's a bill, so kind of long, pretty, I forget how many pages it is, but it's a pretty lengthy bill on that. Other things obviously related to trying to strengthen our agricultural community and forestry community. Love to see some more marketing in syrup happening. I think that would be the best investment of dollars toward that industry. There's plenty of other things I think that I'm interested in, but overall, just want to make a positive impact and work well as a team with folks and listen to what you guys are all wanting to do here too. And I mean, I got tons to learn.
Great.
Yeah.
Well, I think this committee has already benefited from your experience and the work that you do. And so I'm glad that you're with with the rest of us during committee time.
Thank you.
Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I'd love to hear a little bit too, since I missed out on what you all said.
Yeah.
Brief. Maybe if there's time.
I just pulled up, Representative Supranat had made some notes, and I don't want to speak for everybody, although if you want to be sure that you're consistent from one session to session, I'm happy to say what she said. But Representative O'Brien had pointed out that we have in this room, historically, that we've had at the committee, all the talent and resources that we need to make farming and the working lands economy thrive and be successful. And I think that's a good observation. You mentioned a frustration with not having necessarily the resources, the money appropriation to do that. But that historically we've been pioneers in passing legislation, ag-related pioneers. And he also mentioned, hoping that over the course of time, the conversations that we had in the committee could perhaps be gelled into some kind of legislation. So, a committee bill, essentially. So that was John's thought. And Representative Bozanoff, if you want to.
Honestly, I don't remember exactly what I highlighted. Was that one I did by phone over last week?
Yes, you were.
Okay, yes, it was a little, I was a little
You
distracted.
were thinking of other things, yeah.
Yeah, but I would just say, I mean, my interests and, the reason I asked to be considered for this committee is around food and food security, and also particularly local food and produce. So I'm particularly interested in fruit and vegetables and how we can grow and make those available, both to support our farmers and to make sure that those things are a bigger component and available for local consumption by all members of our Vermont community. Is that what I said?
Yeah.
Okay, all right, good.
And the prompt was, what would you like to see, the committee do, and, what do you bring? What are your, what are your passions? And, you know, I don't know if anybody else wanted to.
I would just add to that too, my focus has been on youth, so I'm particularly interested in what happens in school and how we can help kids develop healthy habits and access to foods that are going to be developing habits that will help them into adulthood.
I don't even remember if I reported anything, but I agree with Rep. O'Brien's comment about the amount of institutional, professional knowledge in various phases of our responsibility. So it would be, could not be redundant, but I have spent a lifetime in the working lands, working forests. So as Rep. Nelson said, he represents his district, but he represents all farmers. I like to say I represent my constituents, but all rural communities are high on my priority list, and the working lands. I bring a lot of institutional and knowledge and experience. And I will continue to advocate for the vulnerable rural portions of our state and the farming community, and specifically as well the forestry community, those all the responsibilities that we're under and all the pressures we're under, both social, political, and economic, for a sustainable future. I am on the Vermont Forest Future Strategic Roadmap Implementation Committee, and I want to let the chairman know that on Thursday, the 30th of January, we have a committee meeting, which we do about every 3 months. The first one we've had since early autumn, and that's 9:30 to 2:30. So with your permission, I would like to, I think it's very relevant to our responsibilities here, and my voice is valued there. So I'll be absent on the 30th from 9:30 to 2:30.
And tell me again, Jed, what is the?
It's the Vermont Forest Futures Strategic Roadmap Implementation Committee.
Implementation.
I'm a member of that committee. Oliver Pearson is a leader in that, and there are people from, it's a long cross section of folks in that we're active in the forest futures. I also have to say that there hasn't been a discussion in this committee that I have found to be not poignant or boring. I think that Councilor O'Grady should be paid more if he has to read everything to know everything about reports. That was a little, I'm kidding, but I'm really pleased. It's my first choice to be in this committee again, and look forward to working with you.
Maybe we could set up a tip jar. Let's go. And we're having a report on Friday, 2:00, the Forest Futures Roadmap.
Right.
We're going to get a presentation on that from Oliver and others. So I hope everybody will be here for that.
And finally, I will say I was part of a group that worked with Assistant Attorney General Megan Herty, that on the timber trespass, some of the details. I went on a few field trip visits, one field trip and one meeting in the office sessions. Look forward to following up on that.
Yeah, that timber trespass, that's a big deal and devastating. Somebody up in Troy had that happen to them, and they lost some, they got hydrated on them. And it will take they will never see it back to that condition in their life, in their lifetime.
Very serious.
It is, you know, when someone's pulling off stuff that's worth $1,000 a thousand. And, you know, hardwood and,
Well, it wasn't just a border.
it was more than the border in this case. They went in. And, it was theft, outright theft, and it wasn't prosecuted. It was a don't do that again deal. And this was just, yeah, exactly.
And this is why we supported the bill. I reported the bill in testified in Senate Ag, House Judiciary, others, and it's important for the future of our industry and to protect, obviously, the central force.
We'll probably want to hear from the AG and maybe anybody else who wants to weigh in on the early impact of that legislation, which was probably enacted the first of the year, or 1st of July,
Yeah,
rather.
it's July.
Yeah, so there's been, 6 months.
I will say, I took the opportunity to visit the Attorney General approach Attorney General Charity Clark at a function in early January to thank her for her support and assigning assistant attorney generals to work with us on the details of particularly the questions of forfeiture and seizure, and that it means a lot. She was very grateful for my comments. 3 days later, a new assistant attorney general came in, and on the subject, we were not meeting at the time, but I introduced myself and said, yeah, Attorney General Clark was very appreciative of your appreciation of their support. So the whole intent is to get teeth. So these now, felony or criminal acts will be prosecuted. And so, all the collective work and the other assistant attorney general out that they launched they brought another second case on criminal timber trespass.
Yeah.
So the Wild West is gonna be hopefully,
Tamed.
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 So. That's reporting.
I've got to wrap up here in a minute. I wanted to mention, Sidonia, if we have a slot next week, and even if we don't, why don't we reach out to the Maple Producers Association? They were on
Get on it.
okay. Have they responded?
Yes.
Okay,
They
good.
said you read my mind.
Okay, good.
We're looking for Thursday.
Okay, great, thank you. Good. Anybody else in the next 2 or 3 minutes? Anything to contribute? I had mentioned, I'll just close up then by saying that I'm hoping that some of the things that I'm interested in this year are doing more with the program called Vermonters, Feeding Vermonters, which is run through the food bank. It predates the pandemic, and it has grown a little bit as a result, I guess, of the pandemic. But it's a program that helps support our farmers, paying them to provide food that then goes to the food bank that's distributed fresh food to supplement some of the commodity food and other food that they have. And
So they would get payment to get to the food bank.
it's essentially paying the farmers, and then the what they're producing goes to the food bank. Yeah. And then we've had also some conversations in my part of the state but it would certainly apply everywhere to looking at the current regulations and thresholds for small food producers, that the really small ones that, you know, sell something out of their home kitchen, essentially. Maybe are going to farmer's market to sell. But there are dollar limits below which you don't have to be, you know, fully licensed, and those numbers haven't changed in a long time. So that's the kind of example of sort of it seems like a fairly benign change that if, you know, you were thinking about inflation, if you were only thinking about inflation, you would say, no. So we are the Food Resiliency Committee, as well as the Ag and Forestry Committee, and finding ways to help our local, help that 10% number a little bit higher, that don't necessarily cost anything. Those seem like the win-win. So
Speaking of that 10% number, and I know you gotta run, I will send an email to Ellen or she was sitting there yesterday. Who?
Abby?
Abby. Milk sales in the state of Vermont, milk sales in New England. The milk sales in New England are predominantly fluid milk sales, are predominantly fluid milk produced in New England. Like probably 90%, maybe higher. So I wonder if they include those in their numbers.
let's ask tomorrow.
Yeah. They're here tomorrow. Oh, great.
Yeah.
Remind
That
that,
Abby's back tomorrow, yeah.
because that just would work towards the numbers, because we know the lobstermen all lie.
She's gonna be back now.
Yeah.
You repeat something.
All right, I think we'll wrap up. We'll be back here at